Hi everybody, welcome back. Okay, so we're really getting to the end. I promised you in class today that once we got through Unit 1 and Unit 2, things are going to get moving a lot better and more fluid, and the videos will be shorter. And here we are now, Unit 1, Module 5, the experiment. So go ahead and grab a pen, grab a seat, and don't forget to grab those binder notes for Unit 1, Module 5, the experiment. I'll see you on the other side. As you can see, our learning targets are pretty lengthy. So rather than me sit here and read them to you, if you're interested in the actual details of all the different things that we're going to be hitting upon, you can go ahead and pause me and read those learning targets through. I'm going to thread them together. All of it will be the common language that we will share as scientists while we do experimental design in the field of psychology. Okay, so if you look at the slide right across the top, we're going to explore cause and effect. Like other sciences, experimentation is really the backbone of all things that you measure in psychology, right? You can't just observe your way through an entire study. You have to work with the variables that you have and set controls. And in correlational studies, correlation does not mean causation. One variable has a weak or a strong relationship to another variable. And I've been telling you, don't use the term one thing causes the other thing, right? Because you will have a botched correlational study. Your study will be botched because one thing does not cause another thing. There could be a third variable. But today, if you look at the bottom of the slide, like other sciences, as I said before, experiments form the backbone of research in psychology. And in a well-done experimental study, cause and effect does happen, right? The independent variable causes something to happen to the dependent variable. Now, those terms might feel new to you, and they are, even though they showed up on the test. But by the end of this video, you're going to know all about the differences between all these different types of variables. And I really believe if you hang on there with me, it's going to really make sense. Okay, so just to give you an idea of some really famous experiments, I want to go ahead and show you 3 that you may have read about this summer. First up is Pavlov's dog experiment. Okay, have you ever been so hungry that when you finally get around food or the food is wafting through the air, you feel yourself like you're in one of those cartoons floating after it? I guess my real point here is it's that moment where your mouth starts to water. You feel it in the back of your gums, and everything gets kind of wet. And especially if you think about vinegar or lemon or Takis, a lot of kids have told me, all of a sudden your mouth starts exploding with wetness, just thinking about whatever that food is that they're about to receive. Well, Pavlov had this famous experiment where he believed that you could train a dog to hear a bell. As long as he hears the bell, he's going to associate that with something good. So Pavlov believed that you could train a dog just using a couple of pieces of kibble and a bell, okay? So just like how we get hungry when we see food and we haven't had it, what he would do is ring the bell and then give the dog a treat. He would ring a bell, give the dog a treat. He would ring the bell again and give the dog a treat. And he would do this over and over again until finally he would ring the bell and withhold the treat. And what do you think happened? That's right. I bet you're thinking, just like when we finally see food again, that dog starts drooling and salivating like crazy because he has now associated the bell with the food. Okay, that's called conditioning. And now there's a whole entire category of dog training and animal training based on that experiment. Because you can teach them sit, lie down, right, using a clicker or a bell, because they think they're going to get a treat. And finally, just the reward of you saying good dog becomes enough. Okay, the second experiment that's super famous, Milgram's obedience study, right? This is all about how much do you follow the rules. So if someone, maybe you've heard your parents say, or your grandparents, so you're telling me if somebody told you to jump off a bridge, you would jump, right? When you're trying to explain to your elders why you did the thing that you weren't supposed to be doing, and you said, well, all my friends were doing it. I didn't want to be like the one that didn't do it. Oh, so what if they told you to jump off a bridge? Would you jump? Right? We've heard our parents say that. I'm pretty sure that they still say it. So in this study, it's famous for, if you look at the diagram, it pretty much sets up the experiment for you. So you have a fake subject who is pretending on the other side of a wall to be shocked electrically by another person doing the shocking. The other subject is told, whatever you do, you have to follow the directions here. Even if you think the person on the other side of the wall that's getting electrocuted is in pain, something much worse could happen to him if you don't keep pushing this button. Okay? And he would push, and you would hear screams of pain on the other side. And the guy is actually on the other side, like eating popcorn, watching a video, like not even paying attention to what's going on. He's not actually getting the electrocution. Only the person doing it thinks. So the Milgram was measuring how far would you take it if somebody that you respected gave you a set of instructions. How far would you take it? You'd be surprised how far really upstanding, normal citizens would almost push this thing as if the person were about to get electrocuted to death. That's how much wanting to do the right thing and follow the rules some people feel. Okay, and the last study that was really important in the history of all experiments is Ash's conformity study. This is another one where it's about going along with group peer pressure. Right? When you are learning, do you trust yourself more and like to work independently, or do you thrive when you bounce ideas off of each other? You'd be surprised how much better it is when you're actually working alone. Brainstorming is great with a group of people, but actually trying to break a task up amongst everyone so that everybody's actually learning the content, it can get really super tricky. Okay, so in Ash's conformity study, he basically showed that you had a 33% chance of learning if you took on new material alone rather than with your friends or being in a group where you have different jobs to do. Okay, so those are all super interesting, and we can talk all about it when we get to those units, but I just wanted to give you, whet your appetite a little bit to show you different types of how to talk about different types of experiments, right? So now we are going to talk our way through an experiment from beginning to end. Okay, so we are going to measure how caffeine helps keep high school teachers alert and happy. Okay, so what are the effects of caffeine on teachers? Okay, so in your study, you're going to now have to create operational definitions of your variables, right? You have to set up your experiment by operationally defining variable A and variable B. Okay, so how are we going to define, how are we going to determine that? Well, we have to operationally define each variable. Right, we know we can measure caffeine, right? We can easily find out from whatever brand coffee we are using how much caffeine is in each cup of coffee. And we know the other variable is happiness. So we're going to assign caffeine to our groups, and then we are going to measure how happy and alert the caffeine makes each group. So, what did we say when we wanted to get a lot of opinions from people when we're measuring beliefs, opinions, ideas, concepts like love or happiness or alertness or aggression or feelings? What do we use to get a lot of input? I'm really hoping that that light bulb over your head is lighting up right now and you see that it is a survey, a questionnaire, of course, right? We go out to Times Square and we ask a bunch of people if they're willing to fill out a questionnaire about what they feel about how caffeine impacts people. All right, let's talk about who. Who are we going to do the research on, right? We are not going to go necessarily to Times Square. We've already decided that we're going to test how caffeine impacts the happiness and alertness of teachers, high school teachers. Right? So the category of people that we are researching has been narrowed down. Okay? Teachers. More specifically, we're going to go even further to narrow it down to teachers in Forest Hills or teachers in a regional area around Forest Hills. Or we can go even further and say teachers at Queens Metropolitan High School. Okay, so now we have about 125 people we're dealing with, okay? 125 people is expensive if we're going to give them 3 cups of coffee a day to 125. Like, even if we just ran over to Dunkin' Donuts, that would cost us like $900 a day if they charged us $1 a cup. Okay, so you have to narrow it down even further, right? You have to get that population down a little bit. We need to get a sample of them so that they're all represented in our smaller, more manageable group. Okay, so the bigger population is out there in Times Square, but we decided to do teachers at Queens Metropolitan High School. So our population is teachers that work at Queens Metropolitan High School. Then we want to narrow it down, and that's called a sample population. Okay, and we want that sample population, that smaller number, to make sure that we have a group of people that represent all of the people that work at our school so that everybody feels like they've been represented. Okay, maybe it means going into the main office and getting a list of everybody that works there and making sure that you get 1 social studies teacher, 1 math, 1 ELA, 1 science, 1 PE, 1 art, 1 music. I know I'm missing something. 1 of each type of teacher. Oh, foreign language, right? 1 Italian teacher, 1 French teacher, 1 Spanish teacher. Right? And then we make sure that they're random, so we put all 125 names in a hat, and you pull out, say, 15 or 20. Okay? By pulling them out of a hat, if we have 125 teachers that are now unnamed, right, folded up paper and anonymous, we're going to need to make sure that we don't look when we're pulling the names out, right? So then we have a much stronger sample because it's random. Right now, we have no longer a general population, no longer our population, we have a sample population. That's what it's called, right? And then a random sample is taken again from each of those categories, kind of ensuring that a sample is what it's supposed to be, and that is representative of the bigger population, in this case, all of the teachers in the school. So maybe we can take each of the subject departments, and now we can break them up between older teachers like me, like veteran teachers, versus newbies who are young and new. Maybe we can do men and women, make sure we have both genders. And now maybe we can, with the way that we have come to learn about non-binary population, maybe we want to make sure we have that represented. Okay, maybe we want to make sure we have people of color, people that are white, people that are Asian, people that are Indian, right? As many different kids that are represented, or as many teachers that are represented in our population, we want to make sure we have at least one person for each of those groups. Maybe we want to make sure we have an LGBTQ represented population. Okay, maybe we want to make sure we have a transgender represented in our sample. The more categories you can get, but keeping the number down, the more likely you are to have an experiment that makes sense and you can apply it to the bigger population and not just one little group. I hope that makes sense. So why would we want to do this? Why do we want to make sure that we represent everyone? Well, researchers need to be able to generalize their findings, and that's the term in the unit, generalizing. Right? We need to be able to generalize the findings so that we can then make conclusions about people in the general population out there in the world. They have to say that what is true of this sample is also true of the general population. So if all you have in your sample, in your stratified sample, all you now have are only female English teachers that identify as LGBTQ, what is that going to do for all the people that want to read your study? If they happen to be men, or if they happen to be older and identify not as LGBTQ, but as hetero, right? You want everybody represented so you can generalize and include all the different ways that people identify. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Make sure you have the different types of samples in order in your notes, okay? If you need to pause or rewind, go ahead and do that. Everyone in the group has an equal chance of being chosen for the experiment. That's why we use a hat, right? We put all the names folded up in a hat. We have no idea who we're pulling out. So random keeps randomly sampled. Now you have finally your participants from the population that you're going to do the actual experiment with. Okay, so next thing you have to do, now that you have your 10 or 15 people, you're going to randomly assign them the independent variable. Okay, so once your sample is obtained, the researcher randomly assigns participants to go into either the experimental group or the control group. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time. You get assigned randomly one more time to either the experimental group or the control group. Somebody on the research will go and collect each of those and write down which person is in which group. Why do we want to randomly assign the control and the experiments? Because we want to minimize any pre-existing differences between the two groups, right? We don't want any third variables or confounding variables. We want our experiment to be tight so that we can say one thing is causing the other. Caffeine is causing alertness or happiness. Okay? Hopefully that's making sense, right? What if your group has somebody in there or a bunch of people that drink espresso every day 3 times or 4 times a day? When you're thinking about setting up experiments, I want you to think about the independent variable is the special thing that's making something happen to the dependent group. For instance, if we started setting up our experiment, group A, B, and C, let's say that drink 2 cups of regular caffeinated coffee or soda every day for a month. Okay, so they are the group to get the caffeine, the independent variable. Your control group is the group that you're likely to compare most to the experimental group. Okay, so your decaf coffee, right? With decaf and then without decaf. And your third group is a second control group. That would be something just like a round cup of brown drink that looks like coffee, but is just flavored coffee drink. No decaf, no coffee, just a coffee-colored drink. Okay, as if that wasn't enough, we have one more term to learn. Placebo is a super important vocabulary term you've got to make sure you understand. It's the pseudo treatment. Pseudo meaning fake treatment. Why do we have a fake treatment? Sometimes beliefs of participants can alter their behavior. So you've got to make sure that you have a fake one in there and they're not just giving it the caffeine. They act the way that they would, knowing that, or they start feeling like all peppy and because they think they may have gotten the caffeine. If they don't know, you're going to get a truer effect from them and a more honest effect if they don't know which one they got, and then you add a placebo to confuse them even more so that they're really going to just behave in the way they are based on what they actually got. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're controlling for bias. There's a couple of ways that we can do that. One way that we do it is what's called a single blind research. Okay, a single blind research is when the participants in the study don't know which degree of the variable that they received, meaning they don't know if they're in the group that got the experimental, the caffeine, the decaf, or the colored water. That, when we have that grouping, it's randomly assigned and then randomly assigned again. And since they don't know which group they're in, we call it a single blind research. Okay? Blind meaning unaware of which group they're in, right? They are not aware if they're in group A, B, or C, but the researcher does know. Now, a double-blind research is when both the participants and the researchers are unaware. They're recorded, some, right? They have somebody working on the side going ahead and making sure they label all the groups, but the researcher themselves do not know which group belongs to which, the experiment or the control. Okay? So hopefully you can see the difference between a single blind and a double blind and know and can see that the better and stronger the research is when it's double blind, right? It's better when it's double blind because it's more secure. There's no opportunity for bias. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Have a really good day. I'll see you in a little while. And that's it for experiments. We have one left. I'll see you there.